Rich, big fans, but we don't do intros. We'll exchange hugs and kisses later, I promise. We have a 12-team Superflex PPR 1.75 tight end premium start 10. Are you going Aiyuk and Goedert or Kyle Pitts in a projected late 25 first? Go ahead, Rich.
I'm taking the Kyle Pitts side. I'm looking at Brandon Aiyuk, and Brandon Aiyuk is in the news obviously because he's trying to get paid, and I like Brandon Aiyuk a lot. I like him a lot as a player, but obviously a lot of his efficiency is manipulated by he plays in a lot of an offense that basically runs like 2 wide receiver sets, that boosts all those yards per hour and all those metrics everyone loves to talk about. Sure. And what really throws me off though here is that Dallas Goedert is just not doing anything for me, for at any level of fantasy football. I mean, you look at the last 2 years, look at how many premium finishes this guy has. He's just not winning weeks for you, not even in a format like that. And I get, everyone's saying, Kyle Pitts, probably done with them, washing their hands. Dude, Kyle Pitts already has 1,000 yard season. Travis Kelce hadn't caught a pass in the NFL before he was the age of Kyle Pitts is right now. Travis Kelce caught his first pass in the NFL, I think a month before he turned 25 years old. Didn't have his first tight end one season until he was 27. So, there's a ton of meat on the bone left for Kyle Pitts. You don't have to even believe everything that you're hearing from Raheem Morris right now that they're going to involve him in the offense. There's just so much more left on the table for Kyle Pitts. And I'm not even going to get into any excuse making for injuries, Arthur Smith quarterback play. I just still want Kyle Pitts. Because he's going to hold that value, too, for trading, even if he's not producing. He still has it right now, 3 years later.
He's still liquid, no doubt about it. Scott, what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I think Pitts over Aiyuk. You would take a first for Goedert, so just 1 for 1 if you take each piece for one of the other pieces. I think it's pretty clear. I'm a little concerned about Pitts. I think he's being a little bit overhyped in terms of the offense is just going to make him magical back to what he was, plus having a good quarterback. But I agree with Rich that he may never become Travis Kelce. That's a high bar to get to. But it feels like if he's just healthy and has an efficient quarterback, he's going to stick in that tight end 4 to 8 range for a while. He's too good. He's too efficient. I think he's not going to fall below that to the point where it's like we're wondering why he had a 600-yard season. Unless it's just injury zap him again. I mean, it's possible that happens to anybody. But I think he's actually a fairly safe asset because I agree, Rich. There's probably the chance that he puts up 70 and 900 next year and we call him a disappointment, but guess what? Then he's going to be 24 and you're going to go, well, maybe he can do it again and get a little bit better. So I think he does have security that we're not talking about. And I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. People thinking, oh yeah, he's just going to become the tight end 1 because he has Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of unknowns still. I think there's questions about how that system is going to use him. We feel, it's just going to be a slam dunk. He's just like a receiver out there. That's not exactly how it works. Especially if they draft a receiver, which we'll talk about receivers later. But
to this point in his career, Kyle Pitts' greatest, gift has been his largest weakness from, deployment in the NFL, and obviously it was with Arthur Smith, but, Arthur Smith wanted to split him out regularly and give him nothing but low efficient targets obviously it was paired with a low efficient quarterback, but we still need in this offense, even though we're getting upgraded Kirk Cousins, we still need him to get some freebies, right? We need him to get used on that shallow intermediate level, and we haven't had that so far in the NFL in his career to this point.
I will say we did shout out to Ray. We did a film room for an hour and a half watching the Rams offense, which is going to be similar to Zach Robinson running it with the Falcons. And there are certain games, certain matchups where it is just, as long as you're going to use him in the same role that they use Tyler Higbee or even Davis Allen, there are games where it's just, there's 6 or 7 easy ones to either the running back or the tight end, just the way that the game is flowing. Hopefully Kyle Pitts gets that, and it's not some of the other tight ends that they end up having on the roster. That's going to be huge in terms of whether he has 90 catches or whether he has 65. But Shane, what do you think? I assume you're with us on this.
Yeah, where you at? I'm just going to recap it real quick for those listening. So it's our usual 12-team PPR, start 10, Superflex, of course. Aiyuk and Goedert or Kyle Pitts in a late 25 first, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, for everything they said, obviously I want to go with the Pitts side, although I do disagree with Scott that he'll still hold value if he doesn't come out and smash next year. If he's another wide receiver 7 or 8 season, he's going to be thought of as Dallas Goedert, even though he is only 24. You know how we act in Dynasty. I mean, we've already given this guy a lot of leeway. We've gave him his rookie year when he couldn't score a touchdown. then, he hasn't done anything we want since, right? So, but we're still giving him that leeway. But again, how it works in Dynasty is one more, not even mediocre, but one more season where he doesn't match expectations, he's probably going to drop in value.
Well, flip that to even Brock Bowers. I think it's just people how treat the tight end position in general. It's not even Kyle Pitts' fault. It's that a lot of people want to chase that unicorn, that leverage, right? That onesie position. I want to have a player that provides maximum leverage versus the field, when that's just such a tight, needle to thread. To saying I'm going to get a guy that just has a 7-year run like Travis Kelce, right? And have this guy that's just an apex hammer. But a lot of these tight ends just don't match the value of even the wide receiver 2s, the wide receiver 3s. And I think that's what it comes down to. Even the Pitts, the expectations for a position, him just tilting you're winning you leagues as a one position player at a position that inherently doesn't score a lot of fantasy points, probably wasn't never his fault either. And we're probably going to do the same thing with Brock Bowers, who is a guy who doesn't have, quite that downfield ability yet displayed in college that Pitts even had at Florida.
So let's do this. We're going to cover a hammer. So Rich, this is how we do our super chats. We have awesome donators, supporters, if you will, who buy us coffees. We call them hammers. We're going to break down this trade. Rich will go first again. And then, we're going to get into this wide receiver saturation topic that Scott had me intrigued by. So Moneyball, thank you for the hammers. Much appreciated. Rich, we're looking at a 14-team Superflex PPR 2.0 for the tight end start 12. Here we go. Darnold, AOC, and any QB out of 53 in a 14-team Superflex. Then we have at running back, Zach Moss. We have Flowers, Diojon, Jacoby Myers, Mike Williams, Wicks. And then at tight end, Laporta, McBride, and Dulcich. Has the 101, 109, 111, 13, 204, and an extra 25 first. Sounds like he has his, thank goodness. I don't see a second part here, actually. So what are you doing with this team? I mean, it needs help. This is a long one. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I was trying to get through all these names and all the abbreviations. Who is this? This team obviously needs a lot of work. It looks like a multi-year thing here. I'm probably actually doing what we said, and I'm probably going to take Laporta right now at his absolute highest and try to, move him, probably, but him and McBride both, right? Because by the time your team gets good, I don't know if these guys are turning it around. Because look at the spots that are just it's super flex, right? And you're dead at quarterback. You've got absolutely nothing. And then, wide receiver, your best guy is literally probably a purgatory wide receiver in Zay Flowers. It's just rough, man. I'm probably taking the best assets I have, which unfortunately for this roster right now are Laporta, McBride, and I'm trying to use those as my chips to try to move for more picks and assets. But you got to find a way to get quarterbacks, man. You just got to find a way to get quarterbacks in this format.
I'm on mute anyway. I was about to start talking. It's got to be so expensive to get up to quarterback range at a 14-team Superflex, and he's got the 9, 11, 13. And he doesn't have a lot of depth to package. Shane, we'll go to you. What do you think on this one, man? Deep format here. How are you making this less than a 3-year?
Well, it's like Rich said. You're trading Laporta and you're trading McBride. Someone will take Dulcich from you. Someone's car's getting stolen as we're talking here. I told you, Rich, it was going to happen soon. Gunshots are coming next. I'd split the 101. I'm splitting Laporta. I'm splitting McBride. I mean, like you noted, you've got Darnold and AOC at quarterback, and then any QB after that. So I don't even know what QBs those are. Josh Dobbs, Tyler Huntley,
Use your imagination.
Tanner McKee is definitely on this roster. You don't have a choice. You're splitting those. It sucks because your wide receivers are all mid. You could move those, except all you're going to get for them is random seconds.
Yeah, this is a start 12, and it's hard to even fill half of those spots. Scott, what do you think here?
Yeah, it's a start 12, 14-teamer. So, I mean, you're looking at a lot more starters relevant here. 168 starters across the league. So even guys like Diojon, Jacoby Myers, those are locked-in starters.
100%.
Guaranteed. It's a 2 PPR. You have the top 2 tight ends. You have the 101. So I'm not saying this team is in any shape to try to win. but it has some high-end assets. You probably have 3 of the top 20 assets in the whole league here with those 2 tight ends and the 101. And then you have a couple other pieces that you can move. So I agree you have to split them. Probably going to be a little creative. Like this would be one where can I trade Sam Laporta and get back Kyle Pitts in a first? Maybe I have to give up that 113 or that 204, but I'm trying to essentially create value and give up stuff that is it fun to have the 111, 113, 204 in drafts? Yeah, when I have a contending team and I can just take shots. But when I'm counting those as assets that I need to turn into something in the future, as soon as you make those picks, you're sitting there going, man, I really hope the lad McConkey I draft ends up being a profit-turning player, not just a good player. If he's the next Jacoby Myers, it's not helping you. You need him to be somebody you can double down and flip midway through the year for a profit. And there's just not a lot of those players in this year's class outside of the top 6, top 8. So I think you do need to split, but it's probably one where I'm fine taking a couple risky tear downs for some of the pieces that I have. That's the only way to build it up. You're going to need a shit ton of assets whenever you're going to be ready to contend with this, and you just don't have enough right now. You maybe have 5 or 6 pieces you can move, so you got to split them all.
So we already have 635 eyeballs watching us. Thank you for joining on a Tuesday, 11:20 in here. Scott, you start us off here in terms of this wide receiver saturation. I heard Rich saying wide receiver or this purgatory that Zay Flowers could be in. Just take it away, Scott. Talk to me about this topic. I thought it was very interesting and very important.
Yeah, it's been a working theory that I've been coming up with this offseason. And I think we're going to see a shift with this year's receiver class. So we're at this peak point where receivers are the dominant currency in Dynasty. You get in a startup, you get in an underdog draft, you get into an FFPC draft, whatever it is, it's 30 receivers off the board in the top 50 picks. In a startup, you're getting down to the point where people are already drafting the Rashee Rices and the Jayden Reeds. Like they're going over QB2s because it's, well, if I don't trust the asset past this year, man, I really don't trust Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford. So let me go grab Christian Watson or Deontay Johnson or just any receiver that I feel, okay, they're a receiver. They're not going to kill me. But I'm going to pose this question. I'm going to start with Shane and then I'll go to Rich. Right now, if you are in a cookie cutter 12 team start 10, 1.5 premium. So no crazy premiums, no super deep ass starters, nothing. Would you give up your ambiguous random 2025 first? And you are not a dominant team, but you're also not a tanking team. You are giving away your lottery ticket that you think has an okay shot of winning, but it also could lose. So you're taking some risk. Would you give up that random first right now for the rights to draft Xavier Worthy? Yes or no?
No.
Nope.
No.
Rich?
No, thank you.
Yeah, 100% not.
Not? Okay,
No.
I'm going to go a little bit higher. How about the rights to draft Brian Thomas Jr.? I'm assuming he's a peck above Xavier Worthy in this draft in terms of
so
when it
no
shakes out.
leverage. You're not giving any
One
leverage
for
to you,
one.
Scott.
I mean,
No third. You're not giving anything.
How am I
for
feeling
one.
that day? Am I feeling disciplined and realizing that Brian Thomas is most likely not going to
Those
turn
are
out to be
rare
any good?
days.
Just
Those are
No,
rare
vibe
days,
with the
Shane.
exercise,
Discipline?
Shane.
No.
Would you give
no,
up
you
that
shouldn't
for the
do it.
110 in this year's class,
You-
not knowing who
no.
it is? Nope.
No.
Zero chance.
How about Jackson Smith and Jigba or Tank Dell?
Oh, I'm not even going to answer.
Are we
the Zay
getting
question.
warmer? Are we getting warmer?
We're getting warmer. I would at least consider Tank. I'm not doing JSN.
Okay. That is
I'm
why
at least pausing. If the offer is
Yes.
Tank Dell for mine, I'm at least stopping and I'm mauling it over.
Right.
Okay. That is wide receiver 24 and 25 in Dynasty right now. And here's the point of this exercise. There's a lot of receivers in that range where people would go, oh, I'd give up a first. And we could go down the line to, I've seen Rashee Rice moved for first. I've seen the older guys, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, those guys still getting moved for somebody that is convincing themselves that it could be a late first. But here's my theory. So that is what's going on right now in Dynasty, right? We already can acknowledge that. There's a ton of receivers. We can go all the way to wide receiver 50 or close to it. Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen. People are still like, I'd give up the 111, 112 for those. And I'm not saying 111 or 112 is worth the future first. I'd rather have the future first. But if I have a 111 or 112, I bet I can kick a second onto that pick and get somebody's mid first next year. So there's a path. So here's my question. We have that going on. We're about to bring in, Rich, I don't know if you've done any mock drafts, but people are jamming 15 receivers into the first 2 rounds of mock drafts this year.
I've had already 4 real drafts go down.
And how many receivers?
Nice.
Is it just receivers getting pounded for the first like 25, 30 picks? Just everyone telling themselves a story on 15, 16, 17 of these rookie receivers. And we're adding them to the landscape of all of this saturation that I just talked about. And I'll let you guys talk, but I'm going to go through some comps later. And I would just tell you, is it a successful pick? I'll give you 2 examples. If I take Javon Baker, Rich, I don't know if you like Javon Baker or not, but let's say Javon Baker goes in the 3rd round to Buffalo. All right. Or just 3rd round to a good spot. Would you be happy if he ends up being Romeo Doubs? Is that a success or no? Say you get him in the late 2nd of the rookie draft. Is that a good pick?
I lean no.
No. Okay. What about
not Romeo Doubs?
Roman Wilson ends up becoming the next Josh Downs. Is that a good pick, Shane? Successful?
No. Let's go with no.
Okay. And I could give 10 more examples like this of receivers right now in Dynasty that you go, that's a usable player. Khalil Shakir, nice receiver. Josh Palmer, nice receiver. None of these guys have any value to the point where if you went and tried to get back into this class so you could draft the next Romeo Doubs with Romeo Doubs, nah, I'm good. I don't really like Romeo Doubs. I'd rather take my shot at the rookie. Yet we're valuing these rookie receivers this year like they are all going to come in and they are all going to fit into the DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Brandon Aiyuk, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith. And next year, there's just going to be 12 more of those guys. And that's just not how it works. So I think this is going to be the tipping point. And I think a way to get ahead of it is getting out of a lot of these guys for ambiguous first, understanding how much you need to actually win at receiver and how little you probably need to pay at the bottom end of those ranges while everybody else is paying first for Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. Like they're studs and they're just not. So that's my theory, Clay. It's wide receiver saturation. And this year is going to be the tipping point where people start realizing, yeah, I probably shouldn't be paying future first for that wide receiver 26 or wide receiver 20 because it's just not getting me anywhere.
So here's just one. I don't know if it's pushback, whatever. Yeah, it's pushback. I'm going to push back on it.
Pushback, Shane.
Yeah, the comments are cracking me up tonight. Anyway, I don't think anyone that drafts or trades for Jordan Addison goes, oh, cool, I'm getting the wide receiver 24. They go, dude, did you see what he did last year as a rookie? I'm getting him for like a future random first. There's no way he's not going to be a top 10 receiver every year. Like, I think most of the people that when you trade for receivers, that's the outcome that you're expecting. I hope you're not. Well, at least I don't know that I'm purposely trading for like a wide receiver 3. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going out of my way to do that. And I don't think most of the community is. I could be wrong. I think most of the community, when they make trades for these receivers, they're like, all right, I can't afford CeeDee Lamb. I can't afford Justin Jefferson, but I can afford Zay Flowers, who could be the next Antonio Brown, from what I was told last year. So I'll make that bet. And it won't hit. And then you'll do the same thing next year and just keep trading your future picks. But I mean, that's, I think, the thought process behind it.
What do you think here, Rich?
I mean, there's a lot of things here that I think that have gotten us to this point. One, I think we're in a stage at the wide receiver position where we have kind of finite resources. Maybe the top 3 of this class will kind of be an elixir for some of those guys, but we have a very short, kind of tier 1 alpha wide receiver list anyways for Dynasty, because a lot of the really good players at the position are kind of aging out and they're not being handled there, right? Like, we've got Tyreek's the one guy I think that from an age perspective, everyone's still kind of willing to kind of pay for and be in on. But then you go when get down to the Devontae Adams, the Cooper Kupps, the Mike Evans, the Keenan Allens, like those guys are, it's Stephon Diggs, like those guys are, you're falling out of the wide receiver 2 range. Those guys are all getting taken wide receiver 25 plus. Tyreek's like the one guy that's the exception just because he has like a true spade and he's in like the one setup for him to like just kind of go nuclear.
Just be a hammer until he's done. Yeah.
And then you have to pair this too with not only this running back class, but the current state of the running back, it's where running backs are now too. Like I brought this up with Ray, is this the softest running back position's ever been for you guys playing Dynasty? For me, it is. We have essentially like 3 really good 3-down running backs, and then you've got a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, like floating around the outside. Guys like Devin Achane, these guys are not like when I was growing up and playing fantasy football. Like these are not the running backs you were looking for, right? Like we're way past
You're looking
the guys
for like Brandon Jacobs, or those the types?
Well, no, just like the LTs, the guys that are getting like 300 plus touches are never coming off the field. They're going to score every touchdown this team scores. Like that doesn't exist at the running back position anymore. And it's made it for a dynasty position, like I said, like the running back position right now from a dynasty perspective is heinous. Like the guy Scott's reeling off that you're like, oh, I'm not comfortable with that guy at wide receiver 24, 25. Tell me when you get to RB9, the names you're reading off. Like, are you excited to have Kenneth fucking Walker right now? That's where we are in this running back class that's coming in unison with this wide receiver class is not doing the position from a top down any favors. Now we know some of these running backs are going to run into productivity and be useful fantasy players, and they'll be values this draft because they're, like Scott said, they're not getting drafted highly in rookie drafts. But I do share some sentiment from this rookie class. I think where Scott is leaning, he didn't say these words out loud, but I think a lot of people are misconstruing this class because the top 3 guys in this class as it being like an elite wide receiver class. When I do think once you get past those top 3 guys, the profiles for a lot of the wide receivers after these guys are very sketchy. We're talking about very sketchy, and we're talking about a lot of guys that people like. And I'm willing to, at least in prospect season, take the glass half full approach, focus on a guy's positives. But like a lot of this is a weak production profile class, and a lot of these guys played 5 years in college, at least 4 years in college because of the COVID year. It's this wide receiver class, I think, definitely has a lot of fragility in not being as strong as people perceive it.
Rich, you actually said that you've done 3 or 4
drafts
already?
4 drafts already.
Okay, 4 already. Okay, so those tend to be sharper leagues, right? Not messing around. Could you speak generally to a couple things you noticed that may have been like a bit surprising, and just generally frame up what sorts of formats we're talking? Is it 12 team, 14 team?
They're all 12 team super flex leagues. I do think that a lot of leagues should draft before the NFL draft. I think it's the best format in my mind. Obviously, if you guys are playing casual, people want to see where guys go for landing spots. But one, it makes your pre-draft conviction matter, right? Like, remember when Hakeem Butler was going like people were taking him 101, 102, and then he gets drafted like at pick 100, and everyone just gets to eject it. Everyone gets to pull their takes back and say, well, now he's a 3rd round rookie pick, or I might take him as a late second or whatever because I liked the player before. Malik Willis, a couple years ago was going 101, and he goes in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, and everyone gets a hall pass on that take, right? Like, or where they're drafting him. So it adds conviction. 2, it adds, I think, a lot more activity because of that conviction. Like, you see a lot more trades and jostling because people want to get the guys they believe in or get out of tiers of pockets of players they don't believe in. And those leagues have had a lot more trading than the post draft, where it's a lot more linear, a lot more similar. And then also you get just a lot of guys too that don't have that conviction, right? Like, they don't put a lot of work into the rookies. They let the NFL draft dictate kind of what happens. And those guys want to make their picks liquid, right? Like, they want to sell them because they don't have confidence. So you can have these obviously anyone that plays in a dynasty league should know how people in your dynasty league operate, right? So I know that there's these 3 or 4 teams that don't value their rookie picks because they're not watching any of these. So I can go to these teams and try to get a second, get a third, because a guy maybe I want to take a shot on that I think could go higher in 3 weeks, or 2 weeks now. But but I can say right now, don't believe it. Even all these leagues are super flex. Marvin Harrison went 101 in all 4.
Did he really?
And Caleb didn't go. it's a small sample size of leagues I'm in of 4, but Marvin Harrison Jr. went 101 in all 4 of them.
Yeah.
I think one thing to speak to, Clay, about this, and Rich kind of touched on it, is the other thing that goes along with my hypothesis of receiver saturation at the perfect time with a receiver class that people are perceiving is 20, 25 deep. Historically, like between 15 and 17 receivers go in the first 2 days of the draft. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's up to 17, but that's usually the sweet spot. This year could challenge that. But here's the thing. I think the other thing is this receiver class is deep. There are players where I'm getting to wide receiver 25. I'm going, you know what? That guy has as good a shot as wide receiver 10. And I don't think this year you can just go, well, that guy was drafted in the 3rd and that guy was drafted in the 5th. So the 3rd rounder is better. Hell, I think that extends to the late 1st this year. We saw it last year, but I think this year is going to magnify a lot of the decisions that people made last year on the Pukas and Tank Dells. We saw them kind of come from unusual ranges to hit. Now, were they outliers? Probably I can't look at their profile and say I can duplicate it this year. But this is going to be a year where I think a lot of people, when they look back at this year's class and how these players did it, rookies, we're going to be kind of model busting for a lot of people too, going, that guy came from round 4 and he was better than that player that the same team took in round 2. And we're wondering why the model didn't catch that. And I think it's to what Rich said. There's a lot of weird profiles, but I also think this class is deep enough to where once you get to pick 35 to 115, I don't even think there's that big of a difference outside of what quarterback, what offense, what team. That's going to be a bigger driver, which is going to make people uncomfortable with that's a first round receiver. Well, I have to take him at the 109. And I don't think so. I think and the reason I brought this up is because right now, I think people are looking at those picks where they have the 109 through the 206. They are thinking they are getting the next. It's a guarantee I'm going to get another Jayden Reed or another Rashee Rice. Like, I'm going to get another hit. Then you go through the names, and I'm reading off some of these names like Romeo Dobbs and Josh Palmer and Khalil Shakir. I'm going, would you be happy with that outcome? Nah, man, that's not a good outcome. That's a wasted pick. Yeah, people are so excited to make these draft picks. They love Jalen Polk. Man, he's going to go in the 2nd round, might go in the 1st. Yet they're not a scarce asset. And I think we're probably a little bit over our skis. So I just want to bring that up to everybody that for me, what I'm doing is I'm trying to get out of those picks. I'm trying to move up or I'm trying to move out. And the way to do it, if I can't move my 110 for a future first, you know who I'll move for a future first? Jayden Reed.
Exactly.
You know what I'll do? Draft another receiver, and I'll just roster construct around. I don't need 20 receivers. Roster construction, I think, is going to win at receiver and liquidate those because I think there's going to be a turning point, Rich. Ray's talked about it in the 2025 running back class. You're going to want to – I don't want running backs right now in Dynasty, but if this is the renaissance where it starts to go the other way, guess what people are going to want next year? Your 4 first-rounders that you traded Rashee Rice and Tank Dell and those players to get because they're not going to be scarce assets.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the phrase arbitrage. I think this wide receiver class presents a lot of arbitrage opportunity because of where the tiers drop off, right? Like my tiers are pretty deep in this class. Like you said, there are guys like, when you get to that probably what we'll see that tier, like you said, if you have those draft picks, you're looking at, guys like Xavier Worthy, probably, AD Mitchell, Troy Franklin, right? And then you look at their profiles and you're like, yeah, there are just a lot of similar players as you move down the list as those guys or in their range of outcomes. Like you're saying, if it works out for this player, it ends up being like you look at a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., even who's probably going to be the wide receiver 4 in this draft. If you're in 1 quarterback leagues, like you're probably gonna have to take him, that 106 spot in that area. And you look at guys like who's to say like Devontae Walker isn't close to because of his range of outcomes to be similar, a Roman Wilson, a Javon Baker, like these are all guys of similar archetypes, even like and then you kind of go down the list, like even guys like Ladd McConkey is probably gonna get drafted highly, but who's to say like Ladd McConkey, like you can't arbitrage him with like Jalen McMillan, right? Like guys like that, like in their range of out, Brendan Rice, like those guys can have similar fantasy archetypes as a guy like McConkey who's going to go at like in that area where Scott's saying you have those picks. I've always said, like, if I had those picks, same thing. I want to move out of those picks. I either want to have a bunch of those picks, like in the same area where I can just buckshot it and say, like, hey, I'm taking 3 or 4 of these guys, and I'm hoping one to 2 of them work out. But if you have just one locked in pick in that area from like 108 to 206, like that's a terrible thing. It's a terrible spot to be in this draft. Like I want to move back and have just multiple bites of this draft class. I want to be able to. I want to come away, if I'm going to take wide receivers in this draft class, I want to be able to get like 4 or 5 of them from like a pocket, or just kind of keep kicking the can, or getting those future picks.
What happened with the running backs in the drafts you've experienced thus far?
Just depth, obviously. So like running backs of this year are going to be dictated by draft capital for sure, right? Like that's like who do the Cowboys take, who do the Chargers take, how high they take these guys. So like we're seeing like a lot of like in these, like, so the one that I'm doing right now, Jonathan Brooks was the first running back taken at 111. This is super flex.
Okay.
And Corum was RB2. He went 204. So you got people betting on kind of like the players, and like, but like, you know, that opening tier, like if Jayden Reed gets drafted by the Cowboys, he's going straight up, right? Like for people, right? And I want to be real cautious on this draft class, especially with the running backs, moving the class based on these landing spots, right? Because we're not talking about a guy like Najee Harris getting drafted at like pick 20 in the NFL draft, or Josh Jacobs getting the first round. We're going to be talking about a player that is going like pick 50, pick 60, and then basing the destination he goes in that area versus some of these other running backs we vaulted up the draft boards. I think that's just very tough. I don't think any of these guys have like tremendous profiles and are great top-down bets anyways. So, you know, again, if you're on the board where like you're kind of like, oh, I need a running back, I'm up. Do I just force Jonathan Brooks? Do I force Trey Benson? That's probably not going to be the solution either.
Do you like to take a lot of shots at running back? Just like,
so I'm going to do the same thing.
Same thing. Like just
I just give me just multiple. I'm like that in most rookie drafts, anyways. I just want more picks and I want to just luck. I want to try to luck box into as much shit as I can. I liked Puka Nacua last year. I drafted a bunch of leagues based on me liking him, but I wasn't out there like trying to trade for like 204 and jump the gun, right? Like I'm taking him at like, you know, 310 and like 405 and stuff like that. It's like it's not like I had like massive conviction, like, oh, I got one over on my league mates. I got super lucky still.
Sure. Hey,
Clay, let me ask. I want to ask Shane this too, because I think there's this weird thing with NFL draft, pre-NFL draft, rookie drafts, where people will, and I'm curious if you saw this, Rich, where people took receivers actually higher because the justification was, well, I'm pretty sure that guy's going to get draft capital. I know that guy's going to go in the first 2 rounds. But the reality is, if a receiver goes at pick 49, you know, that's where Tyquan Thornton went. You know, there's a lot of receivers that go in that range, and they're going to go in that range this year, that are just never going to have a chance to be anything for fantasy, especially if you're in a start 10. Now, where I love this receiver class, and where this theory that I talked about for the last 15 minutes doesn't apply, is if you're in, you know, we're about to start a 14-team start 11 best ball league. You know what? Give me all the Romeo Dobbs and the Josh Palmers in best ball. You know, I can roster 15 of those guys, and I don't care if there's a threshold of, man, they have to finish top 24 or they need a 20% target share. Like, none of that stuff matters. So it's totally opposite. But Shane, if you had to do all your rookie drafts in the next 4 days, okay, how many receivers would you just draft because you're like, man, I'm pretty sure that guy's going to get top 50 draft capital? And how many picks are wasted based on that? Because I know you don't like running backs. I don't like running backs. And I doubt you're going to be taking the RB2 over the wide receiver 6 if I told you the wide receiver 6 is going in the first round and the RB2 is going in the 3rd round. But I think that's a blind spot, because the wide receiver 6 in this class that goes in the first, they just most likely their outcome is they fall into that big saturated bucket.
I will say this, though. Everyone knew Tyquan Thornton should not have been drafted where he was drafted, except for New England. So if you then drafted Tyquan Thornton because of draft capital in the first 2 rounds, you deserve the nut punch that came with it.
You look at his profile, and there's about 5 guys in this class people are pumping up, and their profiles are worse than his.
Worse than Thornton.
I will say this. I've read a couple draft guides, and I haven't seen any Tyquan Thornton comps yet. No one's throwing that comparable out there, but I've seen, you see the high end ones, but I have not seen the Tyquan Thornton one, because I would run like hell. I mean, again, where's that running back 2 going? Is he going in the second round? Because if he's not going to the third round, well, then it's a lot easier for me to fade him for that wide receiver 6, even though I probably don't want to. I mean, it's kind of like Rich said earlier. There's 3 wide receivers that are locked and loaded. And then I like BTJ. And then honestly, that's about all I like of this class that I expect anything. Like, I know other wide receivers will come out of nowhere, like Puka Nacua. I know if McConkey can stay on the field, he's going to have 170 receptions in his rookie year because he's gritty and whatnot. But I am really only in on those 4. So if I have an excuse, and I've done it already in the rookie drafts that we have, if I have an excuse or an opportunity to take Blake Corum, Jonathan Brooks, or Trey Benson, I have. So when they're sitting there at 202, and there's wide receivers that I think might have first round draft capital or second round draft capital, I've been taking those running backs. And when there is nothing to separate those running backs talent wise, or at least not definitively, I think the landing spot is going to matter. Now, Dallas looked like a great spot, but Royce Freeman just landed there, so who knows?
You never know. You never know.
So let me throw this out real quick. What impacted your dynasty team more in a 12-team start 10 type format? Josh Downs for his career or Dameon Pierce for 1 year?
Dameon Pierce for 1 year.
Yeah, Dameon Pierce for 1 year. Absolutely.
And I think that is the.
But you also didn't pay for Dameon Pierce, right? Like,
no, you got.
I was a year late. But
it doesn't matter. If I told you can lock in Dameon Pierce for the 112 this year versus draft the next Josh Downs, you would make the decision to go give me the 1 year at running back. And I know that asset is going to be volatile going forward, but you'd rather have the 1 year. But yet we're drafting, and I think it's just we're drafting with the. Everyone has rose-colored glasses, right? The guy they take at the 112 is going to be the astronomical hit that doubles in value. But man, if all I get is Dameon Pierce, that's a wasted pick.
But that's the beauty of Dynasty football. That's why it's the best format, man. Like, it's why it's the best format. It's because wide receivers hold all these they just hold their value longer in Dynasty and longevity, so people want to hold on that. But one running back 1 season makes a larger difference than like any wide receiver 2 season, wide receiver 3 different season. That's what's great, man. It's the beauty of it. It's great. It's because you want to depress running backs, but in an isolated season, having a RB1 is such an advantage over the field. Now, they granted the back end of those guys is kind of nebulous. Like, obviously you have like CMC and we got the Breece Halls of the world and stuff too. But like, you get like a season where like you said, Dameon Pierce pops up or Rashad White pops up last year, or, Kyron Williams pops up. And like those guys can be very fleeting. But that one season just made such a difference in terms of winning league championships versus even a Jayden Reed who you hit on. So that's great. It's what makes the format amazing.
So Rich, why are people so hesitant to pay the 112 for DeAndre Swift? Or something like that, where they're aren't they taking a shot on a very similar thing, and they're hesitant because they're scared that, oh man, he's not going to hold his value. He's a running back. What if he gets hurt? Yet they're going to sit there and draft McConkey and hope he becomes Jayden Reed.
You know the answer to that, though.
I'm working through the exercise.
Everyone's drafting with rose-colored glasses. I'm drafting.
That's what I'm trying to point out, Shane.
And also the belief
away.
And also the belief that these guys are just going to retain more value, right? Like, you can have look at JSN. JSN objectively failed hard last year. And where is he still going?
Correct.
Where is he still going? Where's his perceived value? Now, where's Dameon Pierce's value right now?
I mean, more to the point,
he's a buy as a throw-in, worth nothing, maybe a late third.
What running back was going around? What running back was closest to JSN last year in the rookie draft?
Charbonnet, Kendre Miller, those guys.
To Rich's point, Charbonnet failed as well, right? But one of those dudes you can actually still trade for most of the return, and it ain't Charbonnet, it's JSN, because people.
And I don't think the answer is just draft running backs over receivers. I think the answer is, I'm just giving everybody a heads up. The worst thing you can do is sit there and just make every pick from 109 to 206 and think I'm going to hit. Because even if you hit on a Zay Flowers or a Rashee Rice or a Jayden Reed, that's like the 10% of the outcome that you're hoping for. The more likely outcome is, okay, I got a Josh Downs, right? I got somebody that's not a bust, but I don't know if he ever helps me. He doesn't ever turn a profit. I can't even flip him for what I paid last year. And that's going to happen in a lot of times this year's class. So I want to make that out there before people use those picks recklessly.
But also, you know what you
Right.
can do with those mid wide receivers, Jayden Reed, Zay Flowers, JSN. I can put two of them together like Voltron and go get a really good wide receiver from most people because they go, well, two of these dudes is that's better than the one good player, the one much better player that's only going to outscore the other dude by 4 points a game. And you're like, yeah, sure, no, that's definitely how that works. You take these two okay players, I'll take your one better player, but you've definitely won that trade.
Let me ask you to spin this in a different direction, a different angle here. So this free agency period and this NFL draft is showing us kind of like how the NFL values this running back class, right? Like, you know, a lot of veterans hit the market and they all were signed. Like they all had good contracts in the NFL. How many of those guys are you willing to buy out the door at this point for your twos and your threes? Not even your let's not even say your threes. Let's say your twos. Let's say you have 206. Are you giving 206 for one more bite at the Derrick Henry apple?
Yes.
Like absolutely, right? What
Sure.
about like, all right, so maybe he was too high. Like I went like,
Aaron
what about
Jones.
Aaron Jones? I was gonna say Aaron. What about James Conner?
Oh yeah, James Conner until he dies. It's like forever. It's
But
forever.
these are guys like
Yeah.
gamers are
Right.
like desperately trying to get out on because they hear the bell ringing, right? Like they do this all the time and they panic. Like it's okay to let the go down the ship with some of these guys, but these are guys that are gonna that one. James Conner finishes. Say let's say James Conner, Aaron Jones finishes as like RB10 this year. Like you're probably gonna get more out of that than you ever will that pick that
The
Scott said you're
206.
trying to hang on to.
But and again, that goes back to people just believe that one, they're better drafters than anyone else. Like everyone in the rookie draft swears to God that they're a great drafter because everyone that has Puka Nacua on their team last year loves to show you that they drafted him, like you said, in the fourth round.
Yeah,
All right, well, if you know he's good, I don't know why.
I won't show you my first three picks I made, but I'll show you Puka Nacua.
The first three flame out.
Michael Mayer, you know, like
I've cut two of them already, but I hit on Puka, so I'm good at this. I don't even remember what my point was. That was just funny.
Well, I think one more thing to just mention with this is if you're going to draft the receivers, I think one thing that's very important, we're actually working on something at DD to try to contextualize this, is understand, Rich mentioned JSN, right? Understand the player's perception / likability before you press draft. Because if you have a prospect people don't like and his rookie year looks like JSN, he's buried.
Well, AD Mitchell's that dude, right? Like if AD Mitchell catches 40 passes as a rookie, he's gonna go from like dynasty like wide receiver 30 to like wide receiver 50.
And some of the profiles people didn't love, right? The Lad McConkeys, the Ricky Pearsalls, those guys are good until people realize, man, that's probably a 60 for 800 receiver. And it's not that he's not going to be good. He's going to have no dynasty demand. You drafted him at the 204. You can't even get a second out of him now because people just categorize him as he doesn't matter.
Yeah, Tyler
I think
Boyd.
that's where you have to think before you spend that asset. What is the perception of this player? If he fails, and Shane has been very adamant about JSN and how what he did last year was a failure projecting him forward, but I would argue it doesn't matter because you bought another year. If you wait another year and he does the same thing and then you complain that he's not worth anything.
That's the key point right there. You bought yourself this year to get out on him.
Correct.
But too many people are yelling at me, telling me that I'm not that bright in so many words. And they're going, I'm going to die on this JSN hill when the JSN hill is literally littered. Like it's just piled on other receivers that did the exact same thing in their rookie years and that went on to be absolute nothing. Like wide receiver 4s. Maybe they'll pop for a wide receiver 3 season, but too many people won't get out on them. But okay,
Rich, do you remember the wide receiver 1 in the 2017 class? Do you remember who it was? 2017. Yep.
I'm trying to think of
what
in
the top 10
that was. Wait, is that the year the 3 dudes went in the top 10? So it was John Ross, Mike Williams, and Corey Davis was the first one.
Corey Davis. Davis.
Nicely done.
Corey Davis was a top 24 dynasty receiver for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So you look back and go, oh, he was a bust. No, you were the bust if you held him into year 3 and you still didn't move him. Now, could you have moved him for what you paid? No. But after a year, you could have gotten out for 90% of what you paid. It's the same with JSN. You took him at 106 last year. You could probably get the 108, 109 for him right now. And yet if he busts and he ends up just being a 800, 900 yard receiver, people are going to go, ah, man, he was a whiff. But the whiff was you drafted him and held him, and ignore what Shane was saying. So I think understanding who that player is, a guy like Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, they will not be gifted that same grace. If they are not better than JSN, at minimum, they're done. They're just cast off. No one wants them next year.
Right.
Sure. Here, let's pivot real quick to a trade, and then we'll see where this goes. Shane, we're going to start with you on this one from Kyle S. Thank you very much for the hammer. Appreciate it. 12-team Superflex, half PPR. It is full PPR for the tight ends. Start 9, so a shallow one here. Watson, Levis, Dimes at QB. We have James Cook, Tajay Spears, and Chase. I did it again. We've got Watson, Levis, Dimes at quarterback. We have Cook and Tajay at running back. Okay. Wide receiver is Chase, Wilson, Amari, Christian Watson, and then at tight end, Michael Mayer. 101, 109, 110, 112, 201 as the picks. What moves would you make here, Shane? The activity levels mid said he tanked for the 101 after QB injury hell. Caleb with 1. What do you think?
Oh, Jesus. Sorry. I don't mean to infer that this team's not good, but it's not often that I see start 9 and I'm like, you need a lot of help. But you could probably, you have no quarterbacks, right? You have Watson. I guess you could go to battle with him and Caleb.
That's why he says he's got Caleb with 1. He's got him sharpied as 101 with that pick.
I mean, okay, so let's assume Caleb hits, Watson turns into the Texans Watson, then you're fine. Then you've got Chase and Wilson. You're good there. I'd probably be moving Watson, but nobody wants him. Mayer, probably nobody wants him. I don't know. This is one of those questions where we get this a lot. What should I do when I don't have assets to do anything? I don't know. Move Chase. Can I move Chase for the 102 and something else? I don't. What do you want?
What does he have here?
Shaking his head. What do you got?
He's got the 109, the 110, the 112, and a 201 in a half PPR. Where I'm betting he's looking at those picks, going, "Man, I'm just going to slam 4 receivers there," which is probably the worst thing you can do.
About the running backs, yeah. I mean, honestly, you combine those picks, you're going to start 9. I guarantee you, people still like the 109, 110, 112. I guarantee I could trade 2 of those. Let's go 109 and 201 to get to like 105, 106. Can I combine the 10 and the 12 or kick them to 2025 and get firsts and just try to hope that I get earlier picks than 10 and 12, and the percentages will be really on my side to do that.
What do you think, Rich? What would you do with this squad? Specifically, let's look at the 9, 10, 12, and 201. Are you trying to kick those back to 25? It's a shallow format, but this is not here.
Love to. I mean, as wild as it sounds, there's like outs for this team to almost be competitive as early as this year, probably in this format.
You can see it. Yep.
You squint to see it. I'm assuming that's Garrett Wilson, right?
Yes.
I don't know.
Wait, what is there another Wilson?
There's a bunch
Michael.
of Wilsons out
there. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, you're right. If it's Michael Wilson, this team's even worse. Look, I just want to go back. When I was talking about moving Chase, you move Chase for a quarterback, like top 4 quarterback, and then you don't need to draft Caleb with 1. You go.
Here's the problem, though, with this roster, though, is he's got a bunch of bubble players like that could just be dead. Like, there's a lot of dudes whose value could absolutely just crater hard. Obviously, it starts with the 3 quarterbacks he currently has. Those guys could, even in Superflex, those guys could take a massive hit this season. Tajay and James Cook are kind of those guys that we talk about. Like, they're kind of purgatory running backs. Like, they don't get that workload we desire to have those tilting seasons. It's why a dude like Rachaad White's able to run them down. Rachaad White didn't do anything special last year, but you know what? He didn't come off the field. He didn't play with a mobile quarterback, and like that gets you to fantasy football. James Cook has like that problem. But then you have Chase, you have Garrett Wilson, Amari, because a guy that can tumble. I'm assuming that's Christian Watson. So Christian Watson is another guy who could absolutely bubble out and he can plummet. Michael Mayer could be dead. in year 3. Like you have a lot of guys we can squint. You're like, if this breaks the right way, I actually could have a competitive team as early as this year. But also, you're holding just a lot of fragile assets. And if you can come off of those guys, package with those deals, like, can you do Amari plus 109, 110, 112, and turn that into something? Like, can you do that instead of maybe try to sell the isolated picks? Like, take some of those fragile guys, the Christian Watsons, even Deshaun Watson. Can you use the hopium of Deshaun Watson,
to use that word,
because I mean, as shitty as Deshaun Watson is as a human and as is a real life quarterback, like, he's locked in for 3 more years, and his full games were so good for fantasy because of the way fantasy football is played.
Yeah, but I gotta be honest with you, Rich. No one cared about that.
Nope.
Watson, because I tried to jump on that hill of well, technically we were correct on Deshaun Watson last year if you just look at the full games he played, but everyone has pointed out to me that I am incorrect, and he did not have a good football or fantasy season.
Well, Clay, what do you do in that team? Because this is something that people always ask about. Start 9, start 8s. Our rule: you cannot tier up. Then what do you do? How do you accrue value tier up wise without actually finding an idiot to give you a stud for Amari Cooper in the 109, which is probably not going to happen if it's like people like us in the league. We're not itching to move our 103 to get 2 pieces in a start 9 where we have a lot of rosters that probably look similar. So what's the strategy? Here's the other thing. You probably want to try to move a couple of those picks for future first, just because I don't want to pick at the 110. I don't want to pick at the 112 in this class in a half PPR. Can I move 2 of those for a future first? Can I trade one of those for a running back because it's half PPR? I'll just go to bat with what I have, and guess what? Christian Watson falls off, Will Levis falls off, Michael Mayer falls off. I have 3 firsts next year. So I'm hedging my bets by not making those picks. But I feel a contender would go, let me trade all those picks for players right now, try to win, doesn't work, and then I'm left with nothing next year. So I would kind of hedge my bets there.
I feel like we've been given this same exact advice. Like, if you go back 2 years ago, 15 years ago, 35 years ago, and we were talking about late round first round draft picks, like, since our inception, we've been going, yeah, you need to try to trade that to next year. And no, you can't do it in some of the leagues that we play in, but you can do that in most leagues because people.
I mean, what you can trade in that league for sure is the 101.
Yeah.
I need a 102 and a 104. I'm very specific, very particular.
That other owner happens to have that.
I mean, that's what I said. I'm in the leagues that have drafted, and Marvin Harrison's gone over Caleb because I think the perception is Marvin Harrison has a chance to be one of those wide receiver 1 Gibraltars, whereas where does Caleb go? We know the quarterback position is just currency itself, but where does Caleb go in terms of fantasy ceiling, right? Like, what is his upside? Can he get to Allen Hurts? I don't think he can. I honestly think that's a very, very thin outcome for him. I think you're probably looking at him being like in that like Lawrence,
Burrowy?
like Herbert, like that type of area, and like those guys are almost overvalued in fantasy football.
Don't say.
So, Rich, if you go to the team that's shaky, I will offer you the 101 and that 201. You give me your Trevor Lawrence and your 25 first next year, which could be top 3, top 4 if your team fails. Which side are you taking on that deal?
Yeah, I think
you're betting against Caleb, but you're getting Trevor Lawrence, but you're moving the 201 for basically a coin flip mid first next year.
Yeah. I'm taking the backside. I'm gonna kick that. I'm gonna take a quarterback that's already got the Lawrence isn't going anywhere. Even if he never improves his station in fantasy football, the dude's gonna play a dozen more years.
He's Jared Goff.
He's got the longest leash.
He'll play a dozen more years, easy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's gonna put up and I know that more years squared because he'll put up quarterback.
But I think that's what makes this whole class fun this year, right? Like, because the 101 quarterback, I think a lot of people definitely will look at the quarterback class, and everyone inherently understands Jayden Daniels has a higher ceiling. But also, we just lived through the Justin Fields era where like people tried to hang on to the 11th hour of that and they got scorched.
Yeah, let me ask you that. And Rich, I know we only have you for like another minute. I want you to plug whatever cool stuff you've got going on.
I'm just shooting shit, man. This is cool. I'm down.
Hey, you can hang as long as you want. But I did want to ask you the quarterbacks. How were the Penixes and Bo Nixes and all handled in your pre-NFL draft rookie drafts?
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on them? Like, what are your moves? Is it another thing where again you want to take some shots in some of your leagues, just throw some darts at those guys as well?
Yeah, Penix and Bo Nix went in like the mid 2, low 2 range. The top quarterbacks. I mean, JJ McCarthy is probably the first dude you talk about, right? Like JJ McCarthy, where he's going, because if you're in a Superflex league, he's typically going in that bow of picks that like leads into what Scott said, like 106 to 108. Like he's kind of floating in there. Like, how excited are you to make that pick? Like, even if you're pro JJ McCarthy, like how excited are you to make that pick from a fantasy football stance? Like, what is the outcome that he has to hit to be like to tilt anything? Like even in Superflex, like if you're literally drafting him just for the currency, he's going to retain that value that you hope to trade him. But like, there's no upside there. There's really not. It's really just Jayden Daniels. And when you talk about Bo Nix and Michael Penix, like this is what also makes this class so weird is the COVID stuff, right? Like these dudes took full advantage. Like these dudes maxed out that extra year to their like. Jayden Daniels won a Heisman. Like literally, like if all these guys have to come out last year, where do they go? Like they're 3rd round picks, like in the NFL draft, easy. Like dudes are taking a shot like on pedigree. All of them had that. But all these guys went nuclear. If we do happen to see Penix and Bo Nix sneak into the 1st round of the NFL draft, they'll literally be they'll be 4 and 5 in terms of the oldest 1st round quarterbacks ever drafted. The oldest quarterbacks drafted in the 1st right now are Brandon Weeden, LOL. Would have never happened in this era. Like I don't know how it ever happened.
Chris Wanky.
Wanky was. Where's he at?
Wanky was 63 when he was drafted.
Carson Palmer, and then Jason Campbell.
Burrow was older, right? But nowhere near these.
But also
guys
remember, Burrow was still the first quarterback taken in the class. We're talking about the 5th or 6th quarterback taken in the class.
Yep.
Like, and this is why these teams, like, if you're like the Denvers, the Minnesotas, the Seattles, the Las Vegas Raiders, like, how could you possibly sell yourself on taking one of those players when you have just infinite needs on your rosters right now at that spot? Because it's one thing if you're reaching on the quarterback 1 and you're overlooking something. You're talking about the quarterback 5 or 6 in this draft class and doing that. It's absolutely bonkers, man. Well, it's absolutely nuts.
They're just hoping that they strike gold, and that they're getting a franchise quarterback relatively cheaply compared to everyone else, relatively cheaply, rather than trading up and going, all right, I'm the Raiders. Maybe I should try to trade up and get Jayden Daniels instead. Yeah, let me take Bo Nix and just give up. Like just drafting Bo Nix in any situation, real football, fantasy football, that is the epitome of giving up. Like you need to check in on people that draft Bo Nix. Like they might not be okay. Like things could be going wrong in their life.
We've had this debate, Shane, so many times.
And it's one of our best TikToks recently. Actually,
Sam Howell was trading for first last year, and I guess I am intrigued by those guys going in the late 2nd, Rich, because if you draft wide receiver 12, Ricky Pearsall there, what the hell are you hoping to do with that?
Yeah,
you get Josh Downs, maybe. What is the
I can
plan
tell you
with
one
that
of the picks was me. I took it just on your principle. I had 211, and the wide receiver is my choice. I took Michael Penix at 211 on just principle of the format. And let me see. Let me tell you the receivers that were there at that point that went around him. The next running back taken was Will Shipley. The next wide receiver taken was Jermaine Burton. Then Brendan Rice. Like that's where we were already. And so I just took the quarterback on principle. Like
as you should.
There's the landing spot elevation. One of those guys goes to Minnesota. One of them goes to Denver, the Raiders, somebody like that. It's an easy flip. But here's the thing. Will people have the discipline to sell that quarterback when they land somewhere and accept the 2 future seconds that they get offered for Michael Penix when he takes over as a starter? Even if he's only going to start for half a year, you go in the 2nd round, which I'm very confident Nix and Penix go in the 2nd, if not higher. It is a guarantee they will get a chance to start for a pocket of time, whether that's 4 games, 8 games, whatever. Will you have the discipline to just take the profit? Because I would argue that's easier profit than drafting Brendan Rice and hoping you can ever sell him for anything. Yet people will still do it. So I'm shocked they went that far, Rich. I actually think people would have taken him higher, like late first, early second.
If we
2 or 3, 4.
Well, if we draft the same league post draft and Michael Penix goes in let's just say one of those teams doesn't even take them at 12 or 13, they trade down and take them at 20 in the 20s or something. That quarterback's still he's still gonna go, like, he's gonna go probably flirt with what? Being a high 2, maybe even flirt with like a 1-2 turn in the Superflex format.
Penix is going in the first if he's drafted.
The thing is, I don't care if they even go in the first round of the draft. If they go in the second, a team is not drafting them in the second round of the draft to go, we're going to sit you behind Trevor Lawrence for your rookie contract. They're drafting them to give them a shot to be the next Brock Purdy, to be the next Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson. Odds are it doesn't work, and that team's right back in the quarterback pool next year.
Well, it doesn't work when you try to do it.
Of course.
But there's a pocket of time.
And that's the same thing like you brought up with like the Puka Nacua thing. Like, you can't force Puka Nacua. You have to luck box into that. And it's the reason why like the quarterbacks, like they're so sparse, but you have a gap between you go from Dak to Purdy, right? Like it just doesn't happen.
I am just hoping
what you should do.
The Vikings trade up for Bo Nix, and that's the guy. That's the penultimate pick where Shane is going to have to reconcile his bias if Bo Nix goes in the first to Minnesota.
No,
you gonna be in then, Shane?
No, he's not good at football. He's going to start one game and everyone's going to go, oh, wait, yeah. So is there another dump off? Is that another dump off? Wait, that's another dump off? Oh, where's Bucky Irving to make this guy to take one of these dump offs for 70 yards so Nix's stats can look good? I get the point of taking him so you can flip him. Sure, at 110, 111, fine. Take him. He has one good preseason game. Somebody gets hard for him. I find the Minnesota fan in the league because there's always at least one dude from Minnesota in every fantasy league. So then I'll trade him to him.
We just lived it.
Lots of Ohio.
We just lived it with Kenny Pickett and
that's the downside, right? Kenny Pickett never gave you a chance to flip him. Now I bought him. I overpaid for him in a league.
That's a lie.
Stupidity.
People were taking Kenny Pickett in the first. You could have flipped him for a first preseason hype last year. People don't have the discipline.
That's true. He did.
They read into Michael Penix on the Vikings, and they think he's the next Dak, and they can't move him without getting a first. And then they wait, and then he ends up being Kenny Pickett, and then they bitch because he was a bust when the window existed. It's the same argument as Corey Davis. People don't have the discipline.
Yeah, so every one of these mid-ass prospects, the correct answer is sure, draft them and then be ready to move them immediately when the market says it's time to move them. Don't hold on to them. Don't get greedy and go, you know what? Kenny Pickett did have a great preseason. And I did hear Mike Tomlin say really, really nice things about him. So maybe he will be the quarterback 14 next year. So I should hold on to him.
Man, his hands grew. Here, Shane, here's a trade that we have to hit. I believe this is from the Bill Willicheks, if I'm remembering correctly. 10-team Superflex, half PPR. It is full PPR for the tight ends. 4-point per passing touchdown. Start 9, Shane. Lamar, Aiyuk, Stafford, Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Bijan, Ramondre at running back. Tyreek, London, Garrett Wilson, Godwin, Jacoby, Downs. And then at tight end, Goedert and Otten. No first, second, third. Does have all future picks. This is a mid to low activity league. Says he feels like he needs to stick with what he has unless a tight end upgrade opportunity presents itself. Considering tearing down from A-Rich and picking up a late 24 first or 25 first. What do you think here, Shane? Shallow, 10-team Superflex, half PPR, start 9, 4-point.
I just came all over myself thinking about Lamar and A-Rich in his start 9. Are you kidding me? I had to yell at someone in the patron chat the other day. Like I should have been driving, but I saw like his QB room was like this. And he's like, guys, should I tear off of this? We're like, it's start 9. No. Like these are two people that are going to put up crooked numbers. Like these are two dudes that can win you weeks by themselves. I don't want to tear down from that. Besides the fact, you already have Stafford and Rodgers. So what's the purpose? Like I'm going to tear down that Herbert, for example. Sure, Herbert can give you some nice weeks, but it's probably not in his range of outcomes to put up the types of weeks that Lamar can hit, that A-Rich can hit. Now, and I know there's risk involved with A-Rich, but whatever. I don't care. I'm taking that risk. Was there another follow-up to that? I'm sorry. I got really excited about the quarterback room.
Yeah. You said you did something all over yourself. Do you need to go change? We can move on to Rich's thoughts.
It's fine. No, I'm not tearing down off of A-Rich. I will tear down off of A-Rich if I can get Kyler Murray and the 25 first. I'll do that because people still undersell what Kyler Murray is. Honestly, I might add to A-Rich to get Jalen Hurts to take out what I believe is some of the risk to A-Rich and go get fancy A-Rich, an A-Rich that's actually shown that he can do it on the football field and remain healthy for a season.
What do you think here, Scott?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. He's probably thinking, or he or she, I'm not sure who it is with asked the question, but he's probably looking at this saying this isn't a good enough team to win. But you have Bijan could be a hammer. Tyreek could be a hammer. Drake London maybe could be a hammer. You have 2 hammer QBs. That's what's going to determine whether this team wins or loses. Those 5 players, period. And I don't care who the other starters are. You have good enough starters with Godwin, Wilson, Ramondre. You can get by. You have future picks probably to bail you out 1 or 2 times on a running back if they get injured. You can roster construct at running back, grab a bunch of backups. This team's going to be determined on what the top, probably 4 players, Bijan, Tyreek, Richardson, Lamar. 3 of those players hit their mean every month or every week. You're going to probably win most weeks. 2 of them get injured. The roster has nowhere to go. So it's just very fragile. But like to look at this and say, oh man, I don't have any picks. Because people, when they don't have picks, they feel their team can't get any better and it's not good enough. This team's already good enough to win. In a start 9, you have 4 potential difference makers, like top 5 players at their position. Yep. You don't need more than that. You don't need more depth. The only suggestion I could have would maybe trade a guy like Drake London or Garrett Wilson for like extra leverage potentially. Can I get 2 firsts for Drake London, 25 and a 26, just to insulate myself for the future in case something happens to Bijan or something happens to one of my QBs? But that's it. Those are what's going to determine whether you win or lose.
Yeah. No, sounds good. Good stuff there.
No,
okay.
Jesus. Apparently we missed Bill's question. I don't know whose question that was. I'm going to put Bill's up.
Nice. That wasn't me. He says the Bill Willichek's. We're just dying to knock out Bill Willichek's question tonight. No, we love you, Bill. He says, my question was a 12-team Superflex tiered PPR start 10. Quarterbacks, A-Rich, Young, Levis. He has trash cans at running back. And Rich, we'll start with you on this one. Wide receivers, Aiyuk, Olave, London, Devontae Smith. Also has DK Metcalf, Reed, and Wicks. Kincaid at tight end. You are working with a 104, 105, couple late seconds and thirds. You do have 325 firsts and seconds. And I guess that is is there another part, Shane? Sure.
I'm very confused because I don't know how many skies there are in there. There's at least 3. Who's on this team?
Oh, are you talking about the hammers? I'll worry about that. Let me keep reading this. So, too early to add some running backs and compete, or do we go all in next year? Okay. You want to put the first one back up for me, Shane? And then that's good.
He's also got a trade. And again, this question's literally coming in as we're trying to do this. So, Rich, go for the second part first with that roster that you see, and then he's got an inbox trade that we can hit.
Yeah, I mean, my first thing is like, I talked about this with Ray a little bit last week on my show. That tier, that Aiyuk, that the Drake Londons, the Devontae Smiths, DK Metcalfs, like if you can turn those guys into Breece Hall, if you turn those guys into Jahmyr Gibbs, like that's something I definitely want to do if I can, just because the gap between the top of the running back position. If you can do it, but obviously that's not easier said than done. You need the gamer that has one of those players to be willing to give you one of those players for like a what I perceive as, like I said, like I don't call them purgatory wide receivers. These are good ass wide receivers, but like it's DK Metcalf, right? Like think about what we've lived with DK Metcalf so far to this point in his career. He's not been a bad player at all. He's been a really good player. He's never gotten over that hump. Will he ever get over that hump? People will keep chasing it. I don't know if he's going to get there or not. I mean, there's definitely the perception he still can, but that's where I see those guys like Devontae Smith, Drake London. Like, could they have like a wide receiver 6+ season in them at some point throughout the journey of their career? Yes. Are they going to do it regularly? Probably not. So if you can turn those into one of those, because like I said, one Breece Hall season could actually win it for you, even if you have trash can running backs with him. It could win you a fantasy championship. It can. So I mean, I like using a lot of that tier. You have a lot of those wide receivers in that same tier of guys. Unfortunately, the QBs were, who were they?
Richardson, Bryce Young.
I mean, Richardson's enough to where his season hits you with like, if it's super flex, like you just don't have enough you don't have a second guy to be a hammer. Like you're going to need Will Levis to pull a rabbit.
Oh, you went to Will Levis and not Bryce Young.
I did, absolutely. For fantasy football, I went to Will Levis for sure.
Wow.
Bryce Young from a fantasy football stance, like I don't know what outs he has. And this was the problem we had with him last year, vaulting him, in super flex leagues where he was. And it's what we talked about with this class, right? With these guys, even Caleb, like he's not even remotely has the rushing ability that Caleb has. So like, how's he going to get there, right? Like Bryce Young, do you ever see him flirting with the perennial 35+ touchdowns as a passer in the NFL?
Yes, I do.
Dude, if Bryce Young could get to like QB 15, we would consider that be like one of the biggest rescue jobs in history.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like that would be an overwhelming success. And we're talking about, can he get to like Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford range?
Like I
not the peak those guys, like where they are today.
Yes, today's.
I need someone to look at the ADP machine. There's no doubt in my mind that Bryce Young was a top 10 quarterback at some point last year in ADP. I
9 or 10.
He had to be like right around there. But I look at Will Levis I'm like, he could do some dumb shit and end up being good for fantasy. Like there's an outcome to that, especially when you talk about the changes that Tennessee team is making. Obviously the odds that Will Levis is good. We live this with Desmond Ridder. We live it like from where he went in the draft are very thin. But when you look at the changes that were made, I mean, he was in a system that literally had just guys running downfield. He was forced to throw literally go balls. No guy threw the ball further downfield. And it was a route thing too. It was a route concept thing. Like you have DeAndre Hopkins running go routes at age 31. Like there's better ways to use DeAndre Hopkins. But now they're going to run a shitload of 11 personnel. They've got functional players in the field. They've got 2 interchangeable running backs. What they do on the offensive line is to be determined. But I'm like, hey, I can squint to see some dumb shit happening for Will Levis. I think Will Levis. For sure. I think Will Levis has more outs to have a legit QB1 season than Bryce Young, and that feels awful to say out loud.
But I mean, that makes me dead inside a little bit more than usual. But then what was it? Will Levis averaged like 1.4 yards per attempt or something last year, rushing attempt, something ridiculous. Like he would just run into the back of people. Like he was basically Mark Sanchez.
He's a live asset, but before we forget this last part, let's
like Daniel Jones 2 years ago, right? Like I think Will Levis could like have a dumbass Daniel Jones.
And then if he does, you get out. So here we go. Discipline is the concept tonight. The wide receiver bubble, but really it's discipline. Get the hell out. Like Will Levis had 2 QB1 weeks back to back. I'm out. He's yours.
Yeah. But Scott laid out of those other guys, like the Jayden Reeds, like what to do with those guys. I mean, you have movable pieces.
So at the end, I just want to address his inbox offer. So this is sitting in his inbox. Okay. Are you trading the 105 in London for CeeDee Lamb if this is your team? 12-team Superflex tiered PPR start 10.
Scott's a no. I'm a yeah.
I'm a no, because you don't need to get out of those receivers. You have 6 top 30 receivers. You don't need top 10 receivers to win. What this guy needs is a better quarterback. He needs a hammer running back. I'm not giving up extra assets here. I'm taking advantage of the fact that, guess what? He has 5 top 20 receivers on this team. And I know they're all good. DK Metcalf's good. Devontae Smith's good. Brandon Ayuk's good. They're not going anywhere. They're going to give me 15 point per game, any neater seasons going forward. What I need is a hammer somewhere. And the hardest place, I think, to get a hammer probably in this league is likely going to be at running back. That's where I want to use those picks on. Like, you're not winning with this running back room, but I don't need to upgrade at receiver. This is not a good enough team where I'm starting to consolidate. Go get me a better quarterback. Get rid of Bryce Young. Count him as a first. Add him to a deal. Seriously. Go offer the 105 and Bryce Young for Breece Hall.
104.
Breece Hall. Bijan.
You won't get it. You won't get it. I know. I get your point. I mean, honestly, I would take this deal and then I would go move my 104 for A-Chain. I'd offer obviously for Bijan and Breece, but I'd settle on, or not A-Chain, excuse me, on Gibbs. Sorry, that's a little even that with my A-Chain love. That's a little much. Gibbs.
That's
Gibbs.
a little pricey even with your A-Chain love.
So, but why not offer the 104 for Gibbs, secure Gibbs, and then go to somebody with the 105 and Bryce Young, and go get Kyler Murray?
Oh, if I could do that, obviously, I'm smashing that. Yeah,
I think if you offer 105 and Bryce Young, you got a shot to get a guy like Kyler Murray.
Yeah, specifically Kyler Murray, because most of the fantasy community is blind to how good he is. So yeah, I like that move.
I mean, you could probably get Lawrence too.
But we want a better quarterback than Lawrence. That's why we're going with Kyler.
Well, we would choose Kyler. I'm saying you could probably get Lawrence still too.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I would take Lawrence. I don't know. I'm paying 105 for Lawrence though. I don't have that in me. Go get Herbert. He's fallen into the second round in startup drafts apparently.
Well, Rich, let me ask you this strategy question, because I think one of the things people would do on a team like this is you kind of laid out the outcome for a guy like Will Levis, where it could be a one and done. He finishes QB 12, but he loses his job, right? You can see that range of outcome.
Sure.
But if you're going to make that bet, wouldn't you rather just say kind of punt QB2 on that team and just make sure you start Will Levis every week and make the bet and go try to trade those two firsts can I get Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs for those two picks and Bryce Young? And just, you know how you capitalize on Will Levis? He better be in your lineup every week that he spikes. Because if he's on your bench and you're trying to rotate him in.
And to be fair, you might be able to get away with it with Anthony Richardson. You might, but you also, you could be.
It's very fragile. Yeah. But it's funny. You look back at Sam Howell last year, he had like 9 QB 1 weeks in the first 13 weeks. His start rate on like safe leagues, which are just 12 teams start 10, his start rate in over half of those leagues was like 30% or less.
I bet,
Meaning people weren't
recognizing those weeks.
They were starting, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. They were starting those guys over him, and they weren't capturing those weeks. So it's almost like unrealized war, and then the guy loses his job and you're out. So it's almost like you need to align your bet on a guy like Levis to say, if I really think that's in his range of outcomes, he needs to just be my QB2.
But I do agree with you. I think the very first thing I'm trying to do with that team is sell Bryce Young. And like I said, you're going to have to put a carrot with him. You're going to have to put 105 with him. For you have 9, 10. You're going to have to do that. But I think you can do that. I still think you can.
Would you take a 26 first just to stash it for later?
For Bryce Young? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I think you can get that done in a lot of leagues. If you're willing to take the 26 and not trying to get a 10 or a 25 or a mid first this year, I think you can walk away. But that makes total sense to do that.
Yeah.
We're about done here. We got 1,240 eyeballs in here. We don't necessarily need to bounce right this second, but Rich, what do you have going on? Yeah, we're close. What do you have going on, Reeves?
Well, we're closing in. We're a week out from the draft. I've actually been going through every offensive roster in the NFL and writing up everyone's kind of team needs. I mean, obviously it's format as team needs, but what it does, it helps me is it gives me kind of a launching pad. I kind of do more than just like the team needs. I kind of use it as a forum to go through literally every offensive roster and kind of break it down. So that's been kind of cool doing that. I got 5 teams left. They'll all be out by the end of this week. Those are all free articles too. Ray Summerlin does the defense for those teams. I'm glad I don't have to do both. But then it's just waiting for next week, right? And enjoy the draft. Adjust these dynasty ranks, throw these guys in, kind of see what happens. It's the best time this is like our kind of Christmas for dynasty.
This is our Christmas. 100%.
Our thing, because it's where everything shapes up. It's not just getting to do the drafts afterwards, which everyone loves doing rookie drafts, but it's the shakeup that the draft provides, right? Like to the leagues, because this is probably going to be the most active 2-week stretch your league will have of the offseason. especially a lot of those where it's a mid-activity league. Like, so those teams are all going to be active.
That's going to be high for these couple weeks, right? It's all,
and that's and that just reinvigorates life. But also, if you're a team that is on top of things and you wish your league was more active, you have to take advantage of that 2-week window. You've got to use that to your advantage. So it is fun, man. I'm excited to see where these guys go. And like you said before the show, I haven't been on Twitter arguing, trying to shout over people of like my favorite players in the draft or anything. But it's exciting to see all these that period end in the transition because we don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Well, do you want to, Shane, were you about to say something? Were you waving your hand or were you? No,
I don't think I moved my hand at all. But no, I like Rich's point though, that it's not just a draft. I like watching people melt down because the asset they think they had that was elite is no longer elite because, I don't know, another wide receiver gets added to the room. So all of a sudden, the wide receiver that they thought was going to be elite, like Zay Flowers, they go, oh, wait a minute. They just added another wide receiver. I guess Zay Flowers isn't going to have 160 receptions in his second year. I guess he's not Antonio Brown. And I'm not picking on Zay Flowers. It's just an example.
Sure. Scott, were you about to? Scott has actually been the laggy one tonight. Did you guys notice that too?
Oh, it's been awful, and I don't appreciate it at all. Get your internet corrected.
Yeah, I know. Do better next time. We got Rich Rebar on the show tonight.
I got it. Scott, hot take for being a Bengals fan. First round, what position are they taking?
Tackle.
It's like a weather person saying there's a chance of scattered storms in the summer and the afternoons. You just guess tackle.
Tackle. Just
which way is somebody going? Just say
Brock
tackle.
Bowers. They're getting Brock Bowers. Go for the gusto.
Scott's sticking with that answer. He's just saying tackle. That's it.
Well, no, I mean let's close it out with this. Remind everybody, check out the DD draft stream. If you haven't, sign up with Underdog. Promo code is DDD. We're gonna be there every night. I'm gonna be there Friday and Thursday night for 5 hours. Every player we're gonna react to. We're gonna do a bunch of giveaways.
Well, I'm cutting
thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
I'm cutting you off. I know you didn't want me to be on the draft stream, but Ray said you have to let me be on there. He specifically said it in front of witnesses that I'm allowed on there for the whole time. So stop trying to shut me out.
I'm trying to work on the schedule to get everybody because we have a ton of people that want to show up and we don't want 12 people on the stream because there's not enough voices to go around. But tune in. We're going to be there Thursday night, Friday night. Cody is going to be there all day Saturday, breaking down every offensive player on the second day. And then third day, he's going to be there going through everybody. And then Sunday night, Ray and I will be on Destination Chill, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to probably go 4 or 5 hours on Destination Chill talking about every single player. So I would just tell everybody this: conviction and correlation should be the theme. Think 2 moves ahead before you react to where these prospects land. Be thinking about, if you have these picks now, don't wait until everybody knows what they're going to be. If you have the 110 in your league, don't wait until it's on the clock to go, who wants to trade up for AD Mitchell when the rest of your league's like, man, I'm really not trading up for him. That's a dead zone of picks. Like, make the move today. Think the next step ahead. Don't be stuck and go, on the clock, I don't know who to pick. So be thinking about that before we get here, because it's going to be here. You're going to be on your clock in your draft and you have 2 hours to pick and you're going to be stuck. So think about that.
For sure. All right. Well, we're going to end this stream. Thank you to everyone who already hit the like, because I know that's the easiest way to help out our channel, or the heart, whatever you see in front of you. Appreciate that. Hey, Rich, thanks for coming on, bud.
This absolutely, guys. I appreciate it, man.
This
is
awesome.
Man. This is easy.
yeah. That extensive show sheet we sent you, right?
Yeah.
We don't do those sort of things. I'm going to end this stream. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.